Okay, let me go ahead and show you some animations here of the two physical types of Doppler shift or Doppler effect. So the first occurs when you have a moving source of sound. That's going to be right here, and then right over here is going to be a stationary observer. So in this first situation that I'll show you here, the source is going to move initially towards the observer, and when that occurs, then the wavelength of the sound waves emitted towards the observer are physically compressed. And then the animation will reverse, and then the source will move away from the observer. When this happens, the wavelength of the sound waves is stretched out a little bit. This then results in a lower pitched sound. Let me go ahead and set this into motion. That's what happens when the source moves towards the observer. And then secondly, what happens here when the source moves away from the observer. So watch it again. So as it moves towards the observer, the wavelength is physically compressed. This results then in a higher pitched sound. And then when the source is moving away from the observer, the wavelength is stretched out a little bit. That then results in a lower pitch sound. Okay, and then the second physical type of Doppler shift occurs when you have a stationary source, but in this case, a moving observer. So they're going to have the observer over here move from right to left, and as the observer is moving towards the source, that observer would measure the speed of sound as greater than 343 meters per second. This would then mean that the person would hear a higher pitched sound. And then after the observer passes the source, then the person would measure the speed of sound as lower than 343 meters per second, which would then mean that the person hears a lower pitched sound. So it's a Galilean relativity situation. Let me go ahead and set it into motion. So in this particular case, the person, the observer in red, would hear a higher pitched sound as he moves towards the source. Okay, and then passing by the source like so. Then as the observer moves away from the source, the person would then hear a lower pitched sound. So those are the two physical types of Doppler shift.